Bon dia. Chapter 7, and maybe a bit of Chapter 8 because this isn't a very long chapter, but we'll see. The Strange Looking Chick. After Peggy left the enclosure for his new life in the city, life in the bird enclosure returns to just the two stalwarts, Patrick and Trilby. The hen had first come along courtesy of Melina, one cold winter morning when she was out walking with Stephen and me. The scenery and dress that February day had been quite different to the view enclosed in front of where I sat in that chapel above a choppy English sea on the late morning in sunny June. Scarves, gloves, and turned-up collars had protected us from the elements, whilst Melina had appeared little affected by the frosty morning, going about her scouting expeditions out of sight along wooded tracks, on one of the embankments of tall trees through which she was fond of bursting. Although Melina seemed never to lose track of where her two-legged companions were, we often lost sight of her, and in the early days of caring for the dog it had caused some concern. Yet over time we both learnt that our furry friend was not going to let herself be separated from her adopted family for very long, and the way she periodically came back into view to ensure she had not lost us was indeed endearing. It was not, however, amongst the woodland that Trilby was found. We three walking companions were in a narrow lane a short distance from our home, and Melina was a little distance ahead of us, hidden from view by a walled terrace that formed one side of a small open-sided cobbled square. The area was set back from the main tarmac lane, and the font where she was had been the place from where, during our first weeks in Portugal, we had drawn water. The disturbance which caught our attention consisted of a mixture of some sounds we recognised, coming from Melina, and others which were unknown. The kerfuffle seemed one of excitement rather than fear or threat, but we quickened the fall of our steps to more rapidly see what the fuss was about. The dog had advanced towards the back of the cobbled square, and there, on the ground, was a small bird. Melina did not know what to make of the animal. It was smaller than Patrick the duck, and although it had a few brown feathers on its body, its scrawny pink neck was completely bald. When Stephen and I arrived on the scene, we found Melina lying on the ground, and the bird running backward and forwards in front of her. The dog did not appear to be threatening the bird, but we feared she may unintentionally harm her new playmate. And so Stephen picked up the baby chicken, and now 4 of us returned home. We put the bird in the enclosed area where the duck lived, and if there had been any concerns about the safety of the small thing in regards to the bigger bird, they were dismissed instantly. It was, in fact, Patrick that showed unease at his new flatmate, as she approached him persistently, and unable to outrun the small form, he could only dissuade it from snuggling up to him by staying on his feet and, in what he hoped was a masterful manner, posturing bullishly in front of his new charge. Yet before a week had passed, there was a resigned change in the duck's behaviour, and it was one of the older bird's traits that he began to enjoy the company of another feathered friend once more, and he accepted quite happily his role as a surrogate father and mentor. Before the sun and warmth reached their part of the garden, the two birds would sit huddled together for warmth, and although much of the young chicken's behaviour was copied from the duck, she also gained confidence to strike out alone. Ducks are not built for scratching around in the earth, but the chicken had soon begun that activity, and in addition to this, she developed the habit of making mad dashes towards the sunshine when it did arrive against the back wall of her new home, spurring Patrick to follow her lead in this matter. Before the chicken had a proper name, she had been referred to as Spud. had been Stephen who was responsible for this nickname too, as he had remarked early on the little hen was about the size and shape of a jacket potato. And accompanied by an almost bald body, the image was supported. Eventually, Stephen came up with a new name for the funny-looking creature, Trilby, which came about for two reasons. In the first instance, when the little hen was content, she made a sound very similar to the trill of a budgerigar. And the second reason for her name was to do with her long bald neck, which separated her body from a patch of feathers covering her head. So, as with Patrick, it took little imagination to believe that the bird wore a hat. And that was the end of chapter 7. So, a bit of chapter 8. Flake. The first and last cockerel. Mine was a funny family indeed. If not with the members themselves, then with the situations that we brought about. A year or so after Trilby had arrived, on the morning that we were going to take Merlina into the vet to get her spayed, we were surprised when a man arrived at our gates with a cockerel. He was a friend of Chicken John's, and this connection raised immediate suspicions within Stephen and me, who were pretty certain that the devil within the man we had bought our house from was having a laugh at our expense. John owned several cockerels, and he had voiced to us more than once about the idea of adding to our growing menagerie. I'm more easygoing than Stephen, and I saw John more regularly since it was me who went to clean out his chicken houses. And although Stephen was emphatically against the idea of a cockerel, I was not completely opposed to it. However, unlike Stephen, who saw many situations and sees many situations in black and white, just because I was not against something did not mean I was particularly for it either. But this window of doubt had provided John with an opportunity for a bit of mischief making. The older Englishman was prepared to bet on my doubts, sure that being presented with a fait accompli, I would accept the gift. As it turned out, John was not the last to misread my character. Both Stephen and me had not been best pleased when the bird arrived at our house unannounced. Yet caught unaware, as we were, on our way out to the vet with Merlina, we gave our thanks to the man proffering the bird, and before leaving for the vet's, we put the new addition in with Major Patrick and Trilby. Initially there was madness, with Merlina barking and running up and down the length of the bird's enclosure, and the two resident fowls giving the cockerel a wide berth through their wariness. But somehow, still managing to stare menacingly. When the barks had lessened a little, and the standoff between the birds had turned into a general uneasiness, Steve and I reached what for some onlookers was an unexpected decision. We would get rid of the cockerel, sending it back to John, and also with it sending a message that we would not be toyed with. So that's the beginning of the next chapter. More about our cockerel Flake tomorrow. That's our menu.